Sometimes life feels confusing. Not in a dramatic way, not like everything is collapsing, but in a quiet way. The kind of confusion that slowly sits somewhere in the back of your mind. You wake up in the morning, you go through the usual routine, maybe you check your phone, maybe you scroll through messages, maybe you look at what everyone else is doing. And somewhere between those small moments, a thought appears. A very simple thought. What am I doing with my life? It's not always a loud question. Sometimes it's just a quiet feeling, a small sense that something doesn't fully make sense. Because when we are younger, life feels much clearer. There's a path. School tells you what to do. Teachers give you assignments. Parents give you rules. Your days follow a schedule. And when you are inside that structure, everything feels predictable. You know where you are supposed to be. You know what comes next. But eventually, something changes. The structure slowly disappears. The schedule becomes your responsibility. And suddenly you are standing in front of something much bigger. Choice. Real choice. And choice is powerful, but it can also be overwhelming. Because every decision opens one door and quietly closes another. And when you realize that, life suddenly becomes more complicated. You start thinking about the future. You start thinking about direction. You start asking questions you never asked before. Questions like, what if I choose the wrong path? What if I waste time? What if everyone else figures life out before I do? These thoughts appear slowly. At first, they seem harmless, but over time, they grow louder, especially when you look around and see other people moving forward. Someone starts a career. Someone moves to a new city. Someone builds something impressive. Someone travels across the world. And from the outside, their life seems clear. They seem confident. They seem certain. They seem like they know exactly what they are doing. But there is something important we often forget. We are seeing their visible moments, not their invisible ones. We see the success, but we do not see the confusion that came before it. We see the finished story, but we rarely see the messy beginning. And every life has a messy beginning. Every life has moments where nothing feels certain, moments where the future feels foggy, moments where you question everything. But the internet rarely shows those parts, and because of that, we start believing something strange. We start believing that everyone else has life figured out, except us. But the truth is much simpler. Most people are improvising. They are trying things, learning things, making mistakes, adjusting their direction, and hoping that their choices will eventually make sense. Even people who appear confident often feel uncertain inside. They simply continue moving forward anyway. And that is something many people do not realize. Confidence is not the absence of doubt. Confidence is the willingness to move forward despite doubt. Because doubt is natural. Doubt appears when something matters. Doubt appears when you care about the outcome. Doubt appears when you want to make the right decision. But waiting for complete certainty can keep you frozen forever. Life rarely provides perfect clarity. Instead, it provides small hints, small experiences, small moments that gradually shape your direction. Think about how many important things in your life happened unexpectedly. A conversation that changed your perspective, a random opportunity, a mistake that taught you something valuable. At the time, those moments might have felt random, but later they became meaningful. Life is full of these hidden connections, connections that only make sense when you look backwards. But while you are inside the moment, everything feels confusing.
And that is why so many people feel lost at certain points in their life. Not because they are failing, but because they are searching. Searching for direction, searching for purpose, searching for something that makes their path feel clear. But clarity often arrives later than we expect, sometimes years later, sometimes after experiences that completely change our perspective. The problem is that modern life constantly pressures us to move faster, to achieve more, to reach milestones earlier. We see lists everywhere. 30 things to do before 30, success before 25, millionaire before 30. But life is not a universal race. It is not a timeline where everyone must reach the same checkpoints. Each person moves at a different pace. Some people discover their direction early. Others explore multiple paths before finding something meaningful. Some people change careers. Some people change cities. Some people reinvent themselves completely. And all of those stories are valid, because life is not a straight road. It is closer to a landscape, full of hills, turns, unexpected detours. Sometimes the path ahead looks clear. Sometimes it disappears completely. But movement itself is part of the journey. Even mistakes contribute to growth. Even wrong turns teach valuable lessons. Every experience adds something to your understanding, and slowly that understanding builds. But growth is rarely obvious in the moment. It happens quietly, gradually, almost invisibly. You learn something new. You adjust your thinking. You see the world slightly differently. And these small shifts eventually create big changes. But because the process is slow, it is easy to feel like nothing is happening, like you are standing still, like everyone else is moving forward faster than you. But perception can be misleading. Sometimes the people who appear fast are simply moving without reflection. And sometimes the people who appear slow are actually learning deeply. Depth takes time. Understanding takes time. And the most meaningful changes in life rarely happen instantly. They unfold slowly, through patience, through experience, through reflection. That is why comparing your path to someone else's can be so misleading. You are walking different roads, facing different challenges, learning different lessons. Even if two people start in similar places, their journeys can look completely different. And that difference does not mean one life is better than the other. It simply means they are unique. But comparison makes everything feel smaller. Comparison makes your progress invisible. Comparison makes you forget how far you have already come, because you're focused on someone else's destination instead of appreciating your own journey. And journeys take time, sometimes much more time than we expect. But that time is not wasted. It is part of the process, part of understanding yourself, part of discovering what truly matters to you. And discovering that is one of the most important parts of life, because a life built on someone else's expectations rarely feels fulfilling. True direction comes from understanding yourself, your values, your interests, your curiosity, your natural inclinations. And understanding those things cannot be rushed. It develops through experience, through trying different things, through exploring the world, through paying attention to what feels meaningful. Sometimes the path becomes clearer after failure. Sometimes it becomes clearer after success. Sometimes it becomes clearer through simple reflection. But it rarely appears instantly. And that's okay, because life is not meant to be solved like a puzzle. It is meant to be lived, step by step, moment by moment, with curiosity instead of constant pressure. If you treat every decision as a life or death choice, you will feel trapped.
But if you treat life as an exploration, the pressure becomes lighter. Exploration allows mistakes. Exploration allows change. Exploration allows growth. And growth is rarely comfortable. It often includes uncertainty. But uncertainty is not always negative. Sometimes uncertainty is simply possibility. The possibility that your future might be different from what you expected. The possibility that new opportunities might appear. The possibility that your life will take turns you cannot currently imagine. And those possibilities are part of what makes life interesting, even if they feel uncomfortable sometimes. Because comfort and growth rarely exist in the same place. Growth requires movement. Movement requires uncertainty, but uncertainty is temporary. Over time, the path becomes clearer, not because everything becomes predictable, but because you begin trusting yourself more, trusting your ability to adapt, trusting your ability to learn, trusting your ability to navigate challenges. And that trust is one of the most valuable things a person can develop. Because once you trust yourself, confusion becomes less frightening. You realize something important. You do not need to know everything right now. You only need to take the next step. Not the perfect step, just the next one. And then another, and another. Step by step, the path begins to reveal itself. And one day, you may look back at this confusing moment in your life and realize something surprising. It was not the moment where you were lost. It was the moment where your journey truly began. And the confusion you felt was not failure. It was the beginning of understanding. So if life feels confusing sometimes, that does not mean you are doing something wrong. It might simply mean you are thinking deeply about your life. And thinking deeply is the first step toward building a life that truly belongs to you. Not a life built from pressure, not a life built from comparison, but a life built from genuine understanding. And that kind of life takes time to develop. So breathe, slow down, and remember something important. You do not need to have everything figured out today. You only need to continue moving forward, even if the road ahead is unclear, because clarity often appears only after you walk through the fog. And when you finally reach that moment of clarity, you will realize something simple. Life was never meant to be perfectly understood. It was meant to be experienced, one step at a time.